Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here on a Monday afternoon. But I think the topic of discussion today requires the freshness of a Monday, hence, we scheduled it today. So, I went today is titled Unlock the Future. Over the years, we have noticed how frequently our community's WhatsApp group is bombarded with messages from mothers asking about the best classes, tutors, and summer programs for their children. As a mother of two very young children myself, I know how much thought we put into handpicking the correct school, the correct curriculum, activities, teachers, and coaches for our children. After all, they are the leaders of the future. But do we have the correct metrics for assessing these choices we are making? Do we understand how, in the rapidly changing world around us and increasing dominance of AI, the needs of our children will be different when they begin to step into higher education institutes or even in the job market? At Viflo, we know that when we empower a woman, we help a whole family thrive. So while we provide you with the tools to grow your own business, careers, and networks, we felt it's important to help you make better informed decisions about the choices you make for your tweens and teenagers so they may thrive. Today, we are joined by Kavita Bedi, the co founder of Head Start Mentorship and Journeys Beyond Classrooms, two organizations committed to transforming how children learn, grow, and prepare for the future. With over a decade of experience in education and mentorship, and as an angel investor, Kavita is passionate about helping parents and children become thinkers, doers, and leaders of tomorrow. Please welcome Kavita with a round of applause. I also want to take a minute to thank Ms. Gunjan Podar of Amala Earth for generously hosting us at this beautiful venue today. Over to you, Kavita.
Thank you, Aradhana. And after that very warm welcome and all the anticipation I see in everyone's eyes, I really hope I'm able to live up to everyone's expectations today. So, I'm going to start by going through a presentation where I'm going to address some of the questions that I feel are burning questions of today, and post which we will throw the floor open for questions. When you've come on your seats, you've seen three forms. Okay. The first form talks about what are the top two concerns you have for your child when you think of guidance for the future. The second one is what are the top two issues that you face as a parent? And the last question, I think, that requires a little bit of soul searching is what does success for your child mean to you? I really would appreciate if after the session you take a minute to fill this form up and deposit it with one of us. It would really give us insight into what the concerns are, if they've been addressed, etc. I've also shared a worksheet that we use for summer planning. Summer is upon us, and a lot of parents have this question of what should we do in the summer. So feel free to take it home, fill it up. I would say fill it up with your child or children with you, and then feel free to reach out for a consult or anything that you wish to discuss. And of course, the leaflet talks about Head Start and what all services we offer. So let's get right into it. We've already spoken about who I am. Okay, so who or what are the major influences in a student's life today? It's parents. We actually like it or not, are the biggest influence in our child's life. The teachers. This is not just school teachers, this is all your tutors, this is all your extra academic guides we are all hiring. So, teachers are an important one. Peers, the oh so important influence in a child's life. Media. You will be surprised at how much the algorithm of Instagram is influencing what your child thinks, feels, behaves, eats, dresses, decides to study, etc. The environment. Now, what do we mean by environment? It's the discussions you have at your dining tables, it's what is deemed as success in your house. It's the unsaid messages that are percolated in the environment to the children today. Is it cool to be an entrepreneur? Is it cool to drop out of school? Is it cool to not study? I want to drop out of Harvard to do my startup, is a question I'm often asked by my students. And I say, fair enough, get into Harvard and drop out. I'll be the first one by your side, right? So, success is seeming very easy on social media today. Everyone talks about that 2 minutes of success. Nobody talks about those 20 failures. Nobody talks of those 200 attempts before they have become successful. And all of this is the environment that our children are thriving in. And who are mentors? Mentors are people that they look up to. It could be a favorite uncle. It could be a formal mentor like someone like myself. It could be someone you have introduced them to. So, unknowingly or knowingly, our children today do look up to mentors, right? So, this is the complex environment that is influencing every student's life today. So, we've talked about who is a mentor, but to give you a little more insight, a mentor should be someone who has experience, who has advice to give, and who can support a child, including telling them when they need to course correct. Often, when parents do it, because we tell them sleep on time, get up on time, don't talk to this person, dress up this way, after some time, it's all white noise. So, 9 times out of 10, I've had parents call me and say, look, this is the decision we want to take for our child. The child is not listening to us. What should we do? Often you put the ball in the child's court and kind of rationalize with them, go through the pros and cons, and the end result is always what the child has wanted, what the parent has wanted. But the child feels empowered that they have taken the decision, right? So a mentor does all of these things. A mentor also often becomes the bridge between a student's capabilities and a parent's aspiration. I want my child to become an architect, right? But the psychometric is showing that the spatial skills are not the strongest skill set that a child has. Often you have to have these tough conversations with a parent, right? A parent says, I'm from a business family. The child is going to come back and do business. The child says, I want to study music, right? Should the child be allowed to do that? Yes, of course. Can you explain to them to do music and business? A mentor can do it because they are not emotionally connected to that situation, right? They are one step removed. So, whatever they say to the child is done in a calm manner, without accusation, without fighting, without sulking. I've had parents lock their I've had students lock their parents out of the Zoom room on meetings. And I've had parents, a student of 14-year-old boy tell his mother, leave the room because I will not talk in front of you. And these things do happen, right? But when you talk to them in a calm, organized fashion, and you explain to them the rationale behind what their parents are saying, at the end of that same meeting, when the mother was locked out, and I said to the boy that you have to let her back in simply because it's bad manners, if nothing else. And the mother came back and she had a bit of a issue also because she just wouldn't allow the child to speak. And at the end of that meeting, when I asked the student, what's the one thing you would like to say to your mother? You know what he said? I want to tell her, chill, I will do what you want, but just relax and get off my back. Right? So, this is what a mentor does if facilitated correctly. Right? But at the same time, it's not a psychological counseling. This is not a clinical psychology therapy. Right? So, there's a difference. Okay. Why was Head Start mentorship created? Because there was a need to do foundational skill building, irrespective of the course, the country that you choose, career that you choose. It's so important to teach students personal goal setting from a very young age because to achieve, you need to set goals, otherwise, they just remain dreams. You have to give students access to opportunities. Now, every parent sitting in this room is well informed, has a large network. But do you know when the next John Locke essay writing competition deadline is? No, because it's not your job to know that, right? But for a student who's thriving and wanting to write, that could be a really important place to express themselves and then go on and win international certification. So, access to a lot of opportunities, the right guidance from an early age. And I firmly believe every student is unique. The spark is there in every child. It's the duty of the parents, the teachers, the guides, and mentors to find that spark. There is no getting away from that responsibility. Every child has something unique in them. So, we've talked a bit about this. So, as a program, we work, it's a year on year program. We work with students from grade 7 to grade 10, and the standalone services are open for students in grade 11 and 12 also. Okay, so some of the things we do: passion projects, psychometric assessments, foundational learning for future testing in math and English, subject and board selection, writing research papers in 4 weeks, summer planning, learning the art of self study, and monthly workshops on learning about the world. I must tell you how monthly workshops came about because we launched them this year. We realized that students are so uninformed because the only discussions they're having is what their friends are telling them, what you're discussing around your dinner table, and what you're seeing on your Instagram, right? They are so unaware about what is happening in this world. Now, how do you teach them that? So, we devised a monthly workshop. 1 week before the workshop, we send them reading material. In the workshop, they learn to critically analyze the events. They learn to become anchors and question about them. They learn to write poetry on it. They learn to write pieces on it. So it's just getting them thinking. And this thinking is what brings about the big ideas. This thinking is what gives them essay topic ideas when they have to write their applications. And it just makes them more aware and about who they are, what things they're passionate about, what beliefs they have, what ecosystems they want to be a part of. So, this is called the Global Minds Workshop. I'll give you a few success stories, and these are few years ago. A student raised 76,000 rupees and to support the education of two needy students, one of whom was a transgender. And then this went on to become a part of his application. A Head Start student has collected, this is at that point 3,000, now 4,500 pairs of shoes. The family runs a rubber treading business. So they collect these shoes, they refurbish them, and then it goes back to old age homes and NGOs. This is again, and this student wants to get into product design. So eventually, refurbishing those old shoes will become an example of how he has used his imagination. Another girl who went through a severe eye ailment when she was a child is developing a lab kit for chemistry experiments because chemistry is what she wants to study. And it's a braille kit that she's developing because she understands how visually impaired a child can deal with it. And of course, we have students. The first girl child from India who won the F1 team amongst 33 applications. This summer, we've had students get into LaunchX, YYGS, all the top, SUMAC, all of them, the summer programs, which are very, very competitive summer programs. So while you do some of the soft things, you also do the hard competing things, right? Because there's no running away from the hard things we all have to face. Um, in today's, it says webinar, but in today's presentation, I think the topics we're going to cover is understanding various academic options because suddenly in India, there is a plethora of academic boards that are available. And everyone's thinking about what is the correct board for my child, how to identify passions and align them with career paths, setting realistic goals for academic and personal success for your students, and mastering time management. So let's get along the right board. So there's no magic to this answer. It's actually a very calculated decision that every parent should take. Let's go through what are the boards available in our country today. So whether it's CBSE or ICSE or a state board, these are the widely followed boards in India. They are structured, theoretical, and exam oriented. They focus largely on science and math. They are recognized by all Indian colleges and they are ideal for students aiming for Indian higher education. They are also ideal for students whose learning style is to retain and recall information. So you learn something, you write it in your exam, and you get your marks, right? So this is the standard old Indian board. There's completely nothing wrong with this board. Okay, it may not be the best fashion choice or the best cocktail conversation circuit, but please look around you in the world. All the top CXOs of all the top global companies are people who have studied in CBSC, ICSC, scenic boards, state boards. Okay, so there's completely nothing wrong with choosing this board. I want to state it. Okay, uh, IB. IB is a global curriculum with a holistic inquiry based approach. Okay, the emphasis on is on research, critical thinking, and real world application. It offers flexibility in 6 groups or bands, as different schools call them. It's recognized by top global universities and it's very suitable for students planning to study abroad. What kind of student should choose this? A student who has academic inquiry, who has intent to explore beyond what is handed to them. So, if your child is a student who is an inquisitive academic learner, this is a great board for them. All right. IGCSE, which is often a precursor in class 9 and 10. Again, it is offered by Cambridge. It focuses on practical learning and global perspectives. It has a broader subject choice, and this is a balanced mix of coursework and exams. And often schools use this in the lower high school, and then you convert to the IB or A level. It prepares students for A levels, and it's also widely accepted worldwide. Again, this this system of study is good for students who are not thriving in the academic boards that they are currently in. It requires a lot of effort and time. So, a class 9 student who has suddenly changed from what they have been learning from when they were 3 years old takes some amount of adjustment to go into the system. And also, this is year round. So, this and IB are systems where there are no free times. So, the CBSE, ICSE boards, I should term this politically correctly, but there are periods of academic intent where you have to study very, very hard and you do very, very well. However, for IGCSE, IB, you have to work hard all year round. There are no gap periods, right? So, for students who are doing other things, let's say it's a student who's aiming to become a national level swimmer, or a student who's playing is an artist showcasing at some biennale, or it's a student who's doing theater very seriously, then it's better to stick to a national board where you get periods of interim, um, less academic stress versus trying to do it all between IGCSE and IB. I'm not saying students don't do it. A lot of students do get A stars. They are the national golfers. They are, but not every child can be that. And here we're talking about making the correct choice for your child. By all means, if your child has that extra edge and can do academics and something extra, then go ahead and choose these boards. The A levels is the next one I want to talk about. In this, for students who are very focused. So a student says, I want to study astrophysics and there's nothing else in the world that I want to study. Then the A level is a good choice because you'll take 3 or 4 subjects and you'll study deep, deep, deep into them. And chances are in college also you will go on to take those subjects further. Okay, so I hope there is some clarity now between all the various boards that are available and how these terms get thrown about at us all the time. The next question: how do you identify passions and align them with career paths? Oops. Allow your student to say, what excites me? And this excitement will change with age. This excitement will change with season. But this excitement will also grow with exposure. So if a student is saying, I want to be an architect, in the summer, please find a friend who runs an architectural firm and let your student go and spend 2 weeks there. Law is the other one, which all young girls, I think, watch Suits and they want to become a lawyer. So to that also, one says, okay, find a law friend or a person who's doing law and expose them to all kinds of law. Another popular one is, I want to study design. Okay, what kind of design do you want to study? I don't know. Do you know how many kinds of design there are? No, we don't. So we started a program called the Design Immersion Program, and in which a student goes through 5 classes of 90 minutes each, where they do fashion design, fine art, product design, graphic design, and architectural design. After that, they either come back and say, okay, I like design, and within that, these are 1 or 2 areas that interest me. Or they say, I never want to look at design again. Right? So you're not waiting till grade 11 when you keep thinking, I want to do design, I want to do design, I want to do design. And they start working on their portfolio, and suddenly you're hiring people to create portfolios because the child just doesn't have it in them or is just not interested any longer. And please, if you wanted to be a designer yourself, learn the skill and do it. Don't force your children to become what you couldn't. I mean, this is a harsh sort of reality. We all are guilty of this, that we want to live our lives through our children. So a little bit of soul searching of that question, what does success mean for my child? So I said, explore, we talked about. Assess, use tools like psychometric tests. So while a psychometric test is not set in stone and it keeps changing with time, as a child gets exposed to more, as the learning patterns change, as teachers change, but it gives you a broad guideline. So a student who says, I want to be a data scientist, and their numerical accuracy is not the strongest, or their data cohesion is not the strongest, then at least you know that if they want to still go on that path, it's possible, but they have to work harder at it, versus say if their verbal skills are very good and they want to become a journalist or something like that. Right? So use the tools that are available today. And of course, speak with mentors, speak with professionals, expose your children to as much as you can. Every time we are on holidays, take them to different things. Go to the museums, go to the science exhibits, expose them to music of all kinds, encourage them to read. Please encourage your children to read. And if they don't like reading a book, today it's available in an audible format. They are available as YouTube videos. It doesn't matter how they do it. Reading does a few things. One, it improves your thought process. Two, it increases your vocabulary. Three, it exposes you to ideas which you don't know about. So, as parents, if nothing else from this session, please go back and encourage your children to read. And that can only happen, again, a harsh truth. You can't sit on your phones when they are reading. And you can't tell the didis that they have to read. Okay? So you have to read. Read whatever you like. Believe me, this is the biggest input you can put into your child's success. So I'm actually giving you guys work to do. But please encourage reading and then encourage conversations on that. Right? Why does something interest us? Because we find a space to then evocate what we have learnt. So if you have, a couple of children who are close to age, give them a topic to read on. And whatever interests you, I'm not saying you have to read science fiction, or I'm not saying you have to read about the history of Rome, or I'm not saying you have to read whatever is of interest. It's immaterial what you read, but please, please, please do read. Yeah? Okay. How do you set, today our students are very wise and they're very aware. And if you actually have intelligent conversations with them, they respond. So start talking about goals, start talking about achievements. And it's not just academic achievements. Start talking about terms that lead to success. One good way is to set academic goals. Set specific, measurable, and achievable targets. See, for a student who's scoring a C, to say next time I want to see you get a 95 is unreal. It's not going to happen. But a student who's scoring a C, maybe you just track by saying, we are going to do 20 minutes of math every day. Apart from what homework sir gives you, apart from what you do in school, we are going to do extra 20 minutes. For that, you may have to find the worksheets, you may have to check the work they have done, but set small, measurable, achievable goals. As a student keeps achieving those goals, they keep aspiring for more, right? Think about yourself. You say, I'm going to walk every day. Do you start by doing 10,000 steps? You don't. You start small. When that gets achieved, then you go to the next level, then you go to the next level. Treat them like that. Set targets that are small, set targets that are achievable. That encourages them. Talk about things other than marks. It could be a sport, it could be a dance, it could be a music class, it could be painting, it could be clay modeling, it could be writing, it could be setting up your own business, it could be painting diyas for Diwali, it could be volunteering somewhere, it could be writing bedtime stories. Get them to do something creative outside schoolwork. That really increases what the students are able to achieve. And lastly, use SMART goals. So when we get our marks or we get our grade sheet, at the end of which, sit down with your child and write. So SMART goals are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. So what are these? So let's look at math, because that is often the most subject that gets talked about. I will do 30 minutes of math every day, and at the end of 1 week, I will solve a worksheet. I will ask sir to give me a test. I will complete this level at which I am. Write the goals down, pin it up at the desks or in the rooms. Let it be visually available to both them and you, and see they come true. Sometimes all we need to do is articulate and give ourselves that target to achieve. Okay? Time management. So I was sharing this with someone. I work with students. I chase them for a meeting. I have all the time in the world to schedule meetings. The students have no time. It's really true. So I have to say, can I see you tomorrow? Can you set up your meeting quickly? I'm very busy tomorrow. Okay. Can we do it day after? Mother's message, no time at all. So what are the children doing that is so busy? So I know they are overscheduled. I know that there are many classes to go to, but I think time management, anybody who is able to manage their time well is able to succeed in life, right? I'm sure you all could have been in a different place right now, and more than one thing that you could do. But you chose to prioritize this and to be here and give your valuable time here. So, similarly, and help your students do this, help your children do this. Sit down and create a daily schedule with your child, right? Prioritize tasks, and you can use things like the Eisenhower matrix, where you say a task is urgent, important, not important, can be delegated. And I'm actually going to take you through the Pomodoro technique because it's easy to learn and you can actually do it with your children. Set limits on screen time. You know, we are all very busy being popular parents. We want to be cool parents, we want to be nice parents. Our job is not to make our children happy. Our job is to parent. It's uncomfortable, it is difficult, it's the unpopular way to go, but our job is to parent, which means setting boundaries, which means having difficult conversations. And I'm not saying fights. I often say good fights to have with your children. Um, but screen time is something that definitely needs to be controlled. In a recent study, it's been said that while we are gamifying all the learning, what is happening is that clinically, our brain is getting used to those dopamine hits. And every time we cross a level, every time we get that tick, every time we get the yoo-hoo, a dopamine click happens in our brain. As a result, we are getting so wired for instant appreciation that when we have to sit down and study, we are bored. And that's true for all adults also. So imagine if this is happening to adults, those young minds, right? So a non-negotiable rule, phones nowhere physically in the room that they study in. So they could be studying for 15 minutes, they could be studying for 1 hour. Physically remove the phones. So the next question is, a lot of content is on the phone, homework is on the phone, groups are on the phone. Use another phone which is not theirs or which doesn't have other apps on them, right? Now, even when we are all working, if we get a message, don't we look at it? We do. The students are the same, the children are the same. So when I'm speaking here, I have physically put my phone away, because otherwise, if there's a click, I will look at it, right? So this is a rule that, again, similar to reading, some homework for you. And they'll be crying, they'll be shouting, they'll be fighting. I need my phone, I need my phone, I need my phone. It's all right. Nothing will happen. The world will not stop. The phones will still be there. The party invitations will still be there. The likes will still be there. The bullying, cyber bullying will still be there. So please insist that they physically put their phones away when they're studying or doing anything of value which doesn't need the phone. And at the end of each week, I think this is really important, that if a student or a child is putting in effort, please review it, please applaud it, please acknowledge it. You know, we constantly want the A's from our children. You know what are the A's our children want from us? They want our attention. And not being a to-do in the daily list, they just want our attention. They want our appreciation. See, if they are trying, as a parent, please appreciate it. They don't have to always come first. They don't always have to win that competition. They don't always have to be top of class, but appreciate it. And you know what's the last A they want from us? They want affection. Even when they are teenagers and they are pushing you away and saying, get out of my room and you're the worst mother in the room, they want affection. They want those hugs, they want that love. So please sense that. And those are those 3 A's that you need to give your child for them to get all their A's. Because if you're giving your child attention, you're giving them affection, you're giving them appreciation, you're building their sense of self. And they're becoming self-confident. And in today's world, the only thing certain is change. It's going to be very tough for them to succeed. So they need you in their corner, and they need you to build their sense of self so strong that whatever comes their way, they're able to deal with it. Because the rapid way in which the world is changing, we don't know what's going to hit us tomorrow. And when the children are going to go out into this world, outside this bubble we make them live in, then when it doesn't work out, then it's very, very tough for them to handle. So lots of homework actually for parents today rather than children. Okay. So one of the techniques that I talked about was the Pomodoro technique. It's very easy to do. Buy a simple alarm clock and make this deal with your student. 25 minutes they work when the phone is physically away from the room. Alarm goes off. For 5 minutes they get up from their chair. they do not get their phone in that 5-minute break, right? But they drink a glass of water, they wander about. After 5 minutes, the alarm rings again and they sit back on their chair. They work for the next 25 minutes. Slowly, slowly, you will be able to repeat these cycles that go up to an hour. The moment 1 hour is complete, take a 20-minute break. This technique is simple, easy to follow, and once the students get the hang of it, they love it. So just try it the next time you're struggling to make your child to sit down to study. 25 minutes, 5 minutes break, 25 minutes, 5 minutes break. And start with doing it for 2 cycles, 30 minutes. Eventually, you'll go up to an hour. And at the end of an hour, take a good 15-20-minute break. It's called the Pomodoro technique. It's used by professionals and students around the world. Okay. Some of the things as parents we should also talk about is sometimes, we're all busy. We have careers, we have lots going on socially, we have our own lives. What are some of the signs of overburdened students that you should all watch out for, right? Increased stress, anxiety, or frustration. Those are signs that you stop and ask, what is going on? Try and figure out. Declining grades or performance. This, of course, we are all sort of the alarm bells start to ring quite quickly. Lack of enthusiasm for activities. Often they are so overscheduled that you ask them, I don't want to go for this class. It's something we've all heard over time. So if the child is tired, it's a one-off, it's all right. But if it's repetitive, then figure out, is it because the child is not interested or is it causing more stress to them? So that again is a sign that you must sort of go forward. And then physical symptoms like headache or sleep issues or stopping to eat or overeating are also signs that the child is going through something. So these are things that you must pick up as parents and then dig deeper to figure out what is the issue that is going on, right? So I think that brings me to the end of my presentation, and I'm happy to take questions, and I hope it was of some value.
Thank you, Kavita. We just have a few questions that we prepared, Radhika and me. So we'll run through that and then we'll open it up to the audience because I'm sure everybody has a whole bunch of questions. Take a seat. Yeah, just put it. Okay,
Can I
come.
stand?
Yeah, then you
Yeah,
can
we
all
can
stand.
stand.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no problem. So, Kavita, you said in the beginning that there's a difference between mentorship and psychological counseling. So, could you elaborate a little bit on that so that it's clear for our audience?
Yes. So, psychological counseling is done by certified clinical psychologists who are trained to deal with emotional and other mental related issues with your children. Mentorship can be anyone who is an expert in their particular field, who is willing to invest their time and energy towards your child. So it's different. A lot of times, a student may need psychological counseling, clinical psychology help, and that's when we do call out to the parents that maybe testing is a good idea, maybe speaking to a professional who's clinically certified is a good idea. So there is a distinct difference between the two.
Okay, so my question is, how important is summer school for a child's profile? I think a lot of the moms here, when I heard them talking to you earlier, they were all asking what about summer?
So summer is a very important part of growth for a student, and it just does not mean a summer school. A summer school is a good idea in 2 or 3 instances. One, you apply for a very academically challenging summer school and you get selected for it. Then it indicates later in years that you had an academically inquiry bent of mind, and so you went beyond what was available in your textbooks. The second is when your child has never been away from you and you want to send them, you think you will send them away from you physically to study. So a summer school is a good idea then to send them to any regular summer school where they live in a different place away from you, how they learn life skills. So then it doesn't really matter whether they do it in India or they do it overseas. They meet other students, they learn to survive without that helicoptering all the time. They get out of their comfort zone. So it's a great idea to do it then also. And the last kind of summer school, I think, is when you learn something that you're really passionate about. But other than that, use the summer to do creative pursuits that you don't get time for in your academic year, right? So I was giving this example. If your child is fond of painting, for example, use the time to create a lot of cards, then take them to some place where children do not have access to simple things like cards, right? Go to Can Kids and donate those cards as Get Well Soon cards. It takes your children out of the bubble they exist in. It opens their eyes to the reality of what some other people are going through. And I also had a student who made these cards but ran a donation drive in his colony and collected all the art supplies that every child had extra and then used those to make the cards. So you can come up with a lot of ideas where you use the summer to teach your children life skills that they don't get a chance to learn otherwise. Right? So summer schools are also great, and doing something apart from summer schools is also great. And also use the summer to build up academics in areas that they are weak in. So that when they go back to school to the new sessions in July, they are sort of fortified to face the subjects again.
Thanks. Just one question that's often there in everyone's minds, that when all of us were growing up in the 90s mostly, uh, everything seemed much more simpler. So is it because we are overthinking as parents compared to our parents, or do you think the times have changed? So it's like a chicken and egg thing.
Yeah.
But our parents tell us that we are overthinking, yet we feel our kids are not doing enough. So what is the perception?
I think it's a bit of both, to be honest. Yes, there is what the Joneses are doing theory, that my child is doing this, and or their child is doing this, and why is my child not doing this? But also the reality is the times are different. Uh, for the same schools that we applied to when we were applying, the applications have gone up 7 times, while the seats have remained the same. So the reality is the kids do have to go into those schools. And for that, you need to prepare. Another reality is that the workplace has shifted. Today, you have school children setting up billion-dollar startups. That never used to happen when we were kids. The reason for that is that the entry barrier to industry has decreased age-wise. So if a student is capable, then they need access to those opportunities to get, to succeed. So times have changed, and we also overthink a little bit. So I think it's a bit of both, if I give an honest answer.
So I heard that you were talking about, psychometric testing. I think a lot of us would like to know what exactly is psychometric testing versus the aptitude testing that we, I think, used to do when we were growing up.
So psychometric testing goes a little bit beyond aptitude. So it could be different people use different versions of the psychometric testing available. But a psychometric test can check for emotional quotient, for aptitude, for your foundational skill, which is what you're born with, and your interest levels, which is what comes when you're exposed to things. So different psychometric papers, test different things. And aptitude only tests what you are capable study-wise, academic.
Has AI really influenced any of this? Because I feel like that's another thing which is influencing our lives as well as our children's.
So that's the one thing I want to say. It's no longer optional to engage with technology. So by the time it's no longer optional for us, and imagine for our children. So please encourage engaging with technology at the youngest age possible. And I say there are two kinds of people: one who create technology and one who use technology. It's not necessary that everyone must create it, but everyone needs to know how to use it today, right? So math is becoming more and more important as one of the core skills that our students must know. The other is the critical thinking aspect. See, AI is giving us answers, but answers to what questions? Questions we are asking it. So, if our questions are not deep enough, intelligent enough, we will not get information. And we are all stopping to think ourselves. That is also a reality. And the other skill that is most important is communication. So, whether it's writing skills, because you need to write and communicate well, or it's speaking skills, because everybody has great ideas, but it's those who tell their story well who go on to win things. So, I think between a hard skill like math, a soft skill like communication, and critical thinking, I think if you work with your children on these three things, nothing that is can stop them to succeed in the new world.
Thanks. Just one last question from us before we open it up. So, you asked us in the beginning to define what we think success would mean for our children. And I mean, it's a very poignant question. So, what do you think success means or should mean in the 21st century for any child growing up today?
I think the ability to cope in the new world is my definition of success for anyone. And it's going to be different for every student. The innate ability to cope with the unknown is going to make you successful or not successful in the future. So teach your children not to be scared of change. Teach them. See, as a parent, I mean, I use this term often. We bubble wrap our children so much that when they are faced with anything, they are incapable of dealing with it. And I am the biggest culprit of bubble wrapping, if I can say it, because I bubble wrapped my daughter forever, right? But then life throws things at you. I can't bubble wrap what's going to happen in life, right? And that's when you realize that it's so important that they learn to stand on their own 2 feet. Because reality of life is also that you're not going to be around forever. So stop bubble wrapping your children.
So, we'd like to open this up because we know you have a lot of specific and broader questions. So, please feel free.
Hi, Kavita. Do you suggest any summer activities for 3-year kids? And if yes, what kind of activities?
I got a call from a parent whose daughter is 5 years old and said she wants to become a brain surgeon. What path should she go on? So, but 3 years old, like I'm saying, please give them time to get bored. Don't overschedule them. Make them play a sport. Get them off their screens for some time in the day. Right? If you do just these things, you'll have a very productive summer.
Hi, Kavita. I have a question. You just said don't bubble wrap your children. And my question is, how do we do that in today's day and age and the kind of lifestyles that all of
Unbubble
us are
wrap.
leading? How are we supposed to manage that? Because that is one question that I have for my daughters all the time. Because how do we expose them to something and how do we create that drive within them while living the kind of lifestyle that they're living? Because I really feel that somehow, obviously because they've been born and brought up in this environment, so it's not their fault. But it's very difficult for them to understand the other side of the coin. We were still kind of somehow somewhere exposed to it. How do we manage that?
By the very nature of being a parent, I think intrinsically that sense of protection is something we can't do away with, right? But when you as a parent also consciously decide to expose them to, like you said, the other side, right? That's when the magic happens. So you'll be surprised at if you take them into an old age home, or you'll be surprised if you take them into a science lab and just allow them to tinker with something. You'll be amazed at if you take them for a painting class and then don't have a structured teacher there, right? The thing is that we are over structuring learning too much. And the only way creativity happens is when you're very bored. So please allow your children to get bored, right? And also expose them to, the less fortunate. If you are part of, let's say, a manufacturing setup, take them into the factories. Let them spend time looking at the processes. If you are a designer, design something where they can collect all the, let's say, the cloth scraps and make bags out of it. Allow their creativity to flow. The thing is, bubble wrapping will not go away, right? Let's be realistic. In this forum, bubble wrapping is not going to go away. But within that bubble wrapping, can we at least then create opportunities for them to see bits of the other side of the world? And then it's their choice, right? If they still want to stay in their comfort zone, there's nothing that you can do about it. But then at least as a parent, you have fulfilled your responsibility. Yeah?
Thank you.
Actually audible, I don't need the mic. Firstly, thanks very much. That was really informative. My kids are much older. My son is 16, my daughter is 13. But just shifting gears a bit, with the current situation in the US and the pushback that some of the institutions are throwing back at the government, do you see some of that ripple effect dying down in the second half of this year, or do you see that having a cascading impact for kids who will be applying next year?
So there is no certainty when a certain political leader is in power. What I would say, if I were a parent at this point applying to college, I would definitely not keep a certain country as my only option. So I would say widen your application base. It's always better to have a choice of plenty, right? And then we don't know what's going to happen 3 days from now, right? So to know what's going to happen 18 months from now when students are going to apply is a bit difficult. So if I were you, I would not bank on a singular country anywhere in the world. I would apply across the globe and then make an informed decision basis what the situation there is, not just the geopolitical but also the economic situation, right? Because one thing is students are not getting internships is a big world problem. But when when the local population is struggling to make ends meet, and then you have all the foreign students, they face trouble in a lot of ways, which is perceived and which is said and unsaid. So that's something also to keep in mind. So I would say just at this point of time, every parent, if you're looking to apply outside India, please do not restrict your applications to one country only.
I just feel, with we're so this whole gentle parenting which has overtaken our life. How do we instill basic skill as something as basic as perseverance? Because I see them being hyper focused, but with the first hurdle, I mean, it's on to next.
So I must tell you, a student who's scoring A star, the mother's issue is that she doesn't want the child to take the highest level of math. Why? Because it's too much work. And the mother is a corporate professional who works very hard herself. So gentle parenting there, as you see it. So that's where sometimes the mentor has to step in and take a stance. So I actually told her that you have a very high achieving student. Why are you discouraging her from hard work? When that didn't work, I also told her that, for the top engineering or economic courses in the best universities in the world, unless you have the highest level of math, you are not considered favorably. That did the trick. Right? So I think sometimes it's more a job of what messaging we are giving our children, knowingly or unknowingly. Right? And that child is thriving in the highest level of maths. She's still getting an A star. So imagine that if the mother's gentle parenting did not allow her that success opportunity.
That kind of if the kids are so engulfed in that, even school, like medal for participation. I mean, then how do they ever, like, why do they feel the need to pursue?
It's very surprising, schools are actually pushing children to take easier subjects. It makes their job easier. I hope schools are. Not- but honestly, the thing is, let's look at it logically. As the boards are changing, is the teaching staff changing as quickly? Do they have to work much harder to perform in a different scenario? We also have this classic case of predicted grades being very high and actual grades not matching to those, because the teachers want to safeguard, or institutions want to safeguard their reputations. So while it's all internal, it's all very good. Parents are happy, students are happy. But when they go for external validation, those grades don't match, right? So the easier way out is take easier subjects. It's less pressure on everyone. So sometimes as a parent, you must question those decisions. See, end of the day, the buck stops with you. The child is yours. So no matter what I say, what a teacher says, what a parent says, what your friends say, intrinsically, please believe you know what is right for your child. Even when people come for the first meeting, when they're meeting people deciding, I actually tell them, choose whether chemistry is right for your child. That's the only thing that matters eventually. And I fundamentally did it for my child, and I would urge you all as parents to do it for your children.
So just picking up on that, you mentioned in your presentation that as parents we need to have this balance between setting boundaries, disciplining, and also giving our children love and affection. So can you break that down a little bit? Like, how does one achieve this balance? And especially as a mother, because mothers often become the bad cops, and
The thing is that um, if you ask my daughter, she's going to say you're the craziest person on this planet, because how I smother her. And I have a very dear friend in the audience who knows that what I'm speaking is the complete truth. But having said that, see, I'm not saying don't love them. I'm saying love them as much as you can. But loving them does not mean giving them an iPhone at the age of 13 and then forgetting about their existence, or then not knowing what they are watching on that phone. I'm saying give them your time, not just the gadgets, not just the love, not just the classes, not just the tutors, not just the play dates. Please give them your time. And if you give them your time, that's all that's needed. The boundaries automatically happen.
Hi, thanks for such a beautiful session. My question is very specific to the summer school that you were talking about. And the first scenario that you said, that there are some summer schools which are particularly focused, academic driven
Yes,
summer
yes.
schools. So some of them are conducted by even the Ivy Leagues for
Yes.
primary students, and where the admissions are extremely hard with your entrance exams. I wanted to know that what is the right age? Like, for example, my son is interested in maths, and he keeps writing these entrance tests for maths. So what is the right age at which we can look at something like that?
Today as young as 8 and 9-year-olds have programs. And especially there are programs for highly talented
I
youth
know that. Yeah,
happen.
yeah.
There are international maths. So, for example, in your case, if math is something that your child is interested in, make them do Olympiads,
Okay.
not just national, international ones. Make them do as many exams as you can. So, what happens is their interest in math goes up, the certificates count for when later you're applying. I'll also give you an instance. So, there's a student of mine who was very interested in math and very interested in filmmaking. He has created 15 vlogs on the history of math, right from when math was done with stones and sticks. So he researched all the math fact, he wrote the scripting, he did the talking, he's done the editing. 20 vlogs are ready. As next step, we are translating them into regional languages and uploading them on YouTube, so that it also becomes a social initiative that children sitting in Orissa who may not know, who may be interested in math but don't have the avenue, can go through this content. So there are lots of ways in which their inherent passion can actually become their standout.
So for younger kids, you don't recommend any maths-driven summer schools or anything,
No,
residential programs.
I'm not saying that, but again, question the reason why you're sending them.
Okay.
Right? If math and along with staying away from you is going to give them self-confidence, interaction with peers, being away from mom, away from this ecosystem of this bubble wrapping that we talked about, please go ahead and send them.
All right. Thank
Right?
you.
So I just wanted to firstly thank you,
Thank you.
and so just wanted to tell all of you. So even my son, who's in the 10th grade, is with Kavita under her program, and we went to her when he was in the 9th grade because there was some confusion about the board, and I really feel that she let us make the right choice. She really helped us in that, and I feel that has really changed him as a child, and he's thriving and. So yeah, so I feel just, and every day I learn, right, with her. I still have my notes, though we're with her in the program, but just wanted to thank you for everything.
Thank you. That's so kind of you. Thank you.
Thanks for a lovely talk. I think it was much needed. I had a little personal question. For example, my daughter's 13 and maneuvering the space of the social media. So she's not on Instagram, but she has an iPhone, which I need to give her now. All her friends have it. When I'm not at home, I'm a working mother, I can be in touch with her on that. I like to check her phone at times. And it's a very delicate space between pushing a boundary that mama is, and then, but I still want to see what's going on and then we can chat about it. So, how do I maintain that balance? And is it okay for me to keep seeing her phone? Like, we also, as moms, keep asking that, did you see, so.
Seeing is one thing, getting involved in it is another.
Not to react or.
Yeah. It's a respond, don't react, is my 2-bit of sort of comment on this. It's, create that safe space where your children want to share with you themselves. And it's, if you feel comfortable, see, I'm going to tell you one thing, they're smarter than you are. Right? So if you're going to check and that's something she doesn't like, she's going to create another account. You won't even know about it. Right? So that's why it's really important to have meaningful, open conversations with them.
Give me an example of that.
Anything and everything. Give me a situation.
For example, there's a group chat with a lot of other children, and I'm not liking what's on that group chat.
Yeah.
So I've seen it, and I've not told her that I've seen it. And I told her that there's a chat on the school parent group, that there's this chat going on. And then she's like, oh my God, you're right. And I think I should leave it. So she left it.
Perfect.
But that was one off, and I was successful, but I'm not always. So,
again, control what you can, pick your battles wisely. If you're going to jump into every chat she has, she's going to block you. And she's going to be on those chats with some other name. Right? So you can't control everything. So pick your battles wisely. Right? Anything which is, see, all of us have personal boundaries which are different. Right? Simple things. Some moms are okay with sleepovers, some moms are not. Simple thing like that, right? That may be a non-negotiable for you. Step into that battle. But the length of a skirt the next time she's going out, if it's okay by you, let her wear it.
Let that go.
Exactly. So pick your battles wisely and save, or you only have that many coins in the game. So use them one at a time.
I also have another question if
Please.
nobody else. So, living in a joint family, a lot of people and everybody with their own opinions on how situations need to be tackled. So, including the fact that me and my husband sometimes have different opinions. So, again, how as a mom should we tackle that? And I'm sure a lot of moms face that.
Fight your battles privately with your partner. I would say don't do that when it's visible to the child, because they're the biggest manipulators on this planet. Right? So I would say that's one thing. Be a united front when you're communicating with the child, so they know there's no, mama said this, papa said this. As far as the extended families are concerned, and some of us, do live in joint families, those are battles to be sort of dealt with. Uh, Times are changing, and sometimes you do need to take a stand for your child, you know. And I'd say situation to situation is something. So it's important that both parents are on the same page, I feel, because that's when those battles also become easier to kind of get into, when you're one united front. So these are often difficult conversations to have with your partner. I'm not going to brush it again under the carpet and say, it's all sunshine and rainbow all the time. It's not. But then who said life is? And parenting is.
Thank you.
I have one.
Thank you so much for this beautiful session.
Thank you.
And I had a quick question. My daughter is very good in study. She's someone, the teachers really praise, she's goes by the tea, whatever they say, she follows. But when it comes to extracurricular activities, I really have to push her every time. And she gives them up very easily, telling me that, Mama, I have to study. And then, I also say, okay, she's brilliant in chess. I'd like her to do a sport, be, more physically active, take up some painting because she's again very creative, but she's left everything, and especially at the age of this tender age of 13, I don't want to push her too much because then, she starts using these harsh sentences which I really don't like and they're very hurtful. I'm sure you all know. So, yeah, how do I motivate her to, bring the best
So the
in her?
first thing is, I'd say, become, strengthen your heart. The sentences will become harsher over the years. At 13, you're just at the starting line. But on a more serious note, what is fueling this academic pressure in her? Try and analyze that. Okay. Is it something that, does she have a sibling who's scoring very well?
No, her friends
So
motivate.
that's the peer group.
Yeah.
Also, what happens? See, when you have, and this is something we should all be aware of, when you have very successful parents, and I'm sure everyone sitting in this room is successful in their own right, and not just you, even your husbands or partners or whoever. It's often the unsaid things. So let's say, you've come in the paper today and you're all sitting and it's family time sort of, and that clipping is being discussed, right? What is the message that is being sent to the child? That coming in media is something that is to be applauded, or it's something that is aspirational, or it's something that my mom or dad does so easily, right? Have you ever thought about this? So unknowingly, look at the pressure and standard that child is putting on themselves. So sometimes it's important to have these normalizing situation conversations. And you will find that children with very successful single or both parents put a lot of undue pressure on themselves because the unspoken standards set are very high. So in this case, she's probably competing with that peer group. Yeah. And it's probably not cool not to score well within that peer group.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right? So what I would suggest is use the summer to expose her to something that she thinks is fun.
Okay.
And then see if that helps.
Right.
Right?
Thank you.
I still have one more question. I see a lot of parents, even though I'm not there yet, that in class 7, 8, 9, you want to send them abroad because they just think it's not good enough here. What is your take on that?
It's the trend in season. But again, I feel on a more serious note, I said as a parent, you know what's best for your child. So if you believe that the opportunity available here, the family circumstances available here, the teaching available in the particular area that you're looking for is not up to what you want to give your child, then by all means choose another option. But again, take an informed decision. Don't just do it because your friends are doing it or because it's the latest trend. So research well, Make sure your child is emotionally ready for that move. And if that is the case, then please go ahead and do it. So just be informed about the parenting decisions you're making is all I would say.
Any more questions?
Yes.
What would be the ideal age if we want our child to do that?
So
Like-
I'd say any student grade 8 onwards.
8 onwards? Grade 8.
Yeah. Because that's a good time to then, if you are
Understand.
interested, then to take it forward in a big way and work on that passion to become really good at it and then go into one of the best design schools and flourish in that art.
Understand the different types of design.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'll just invite Radhika, who's the day chair today, to do a word of thanks. And then Kavita's here, so please, don't attack her. But you can ask all your one-on-one questions over some iced tea and coffee.
Thank you, Radna, and thank you for giving me this opportunity. Thanks so much for such an insightful session, Kavita. I think we're all going to go back with a message of how not to bubble wrap our children, but also at the same time find the spark in them, which I think is so important. I want to thank the partners for today. So our event sponsors, which is Amala Earth, Gunjan, who's the founder of this amazing space, was unfortunately can't be here today. But we're very grateful that she could offer us the space here, and you guys can actually explore upstairs and downstairs as well for what all she's actually curated. Can I please invite the past chairperson, YFlow past chairperson Natashi Singhania, to please felicitate Kavita? And thank you to all the ladies for being here on a Monday and spending your evening with us. Yeah. And last but not the least, whoever's filled in those forms, if you can just start leaving them, right here on the red bit next to Thrive, we'll just collect them from there.